Having gone through the cancer, I then went through IVF with my husband as well. And the complications with that, and then I have an autoimmune disease as well. It was like, hold on a minute, why aren't there solutions for people like me? What happened? Well, why am I not important as a woman? Well, it's a $1 trillion TAM. It's bigger than the global crypto market. Why aren't people investing in it? Why shouldn't women have precision medicine catered to them because they have different hormones and chromosomes?
Hello, and welcome to the Bay HQ, where we inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British. Smash that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and leave us a 5-star review if you're watching on Apple or Spotify. Today we have with us Priya Oberoi, who's the general partner and co-founder of Goddess Gaia Ventures. They're a fund that invests in women's health in both the UK and Europe. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
So we've had a good chat before we started recording here. And you've got so many different parts of your journey.
Right.
But when you're growing up, did you ever think you'd get to where you are today?
No, probably not. I wanted to. So I grew up in Southall. I went to a state school, saw, the lifestyle that I have now on TV. And I thought, God, I would love that. But I didn't, envisage it being the way it was at the time. But yeah, when I had the opportunity to go to university, so I went to Oxford and then when I left Oxford, that's when the world really opened up for me. Just the idea of traveling, I loved getting on a plane. I really wanted to be successful. Everyone has their dreams, right? But when you've grown up in that environment, there are not that many role models around you, so that you can say, hey, I want to do what you're doing, basically. But yeah, it's always very strange when you go back to my mom's house and I think the journey's been so long, but it's not really that long in time. But it really has been a very different trajectory to how it could have turned out, right?
You were saying there about that you wanted to be successful once you left university. What did success mean to you at that point?
So at the time, I think it meant what my parents wanted it to be, right? Which was, be a city lawyer and be a professional. And it's really interesting because if you think about it, or at least my parents, they were entrepreneurs. And in those days, it was a bit of a dirty word. But today it's like the word to be like, hey, I'm a startup founder. But yeah, I think for them it was, be a professional, work in the city, then you've made it. I went off and I was a lawyer for 12 years. And I was very good at it. I did actually enjoy it. Things happen to you along the way, don't they? And you're allowed to change. You're allowed to pivot. You're allowed to do something else. And I think once you know yourself, you can change a little bit more easily. I think when you go into law at 21, how well do you really know yourself at that stage? And how well, especially if you've grown up in an Asian household, at least mine, we're quite protected. You're shielded from a lot of things. You don't really know what you want to do, basically. So yeah, I did enjoy that period of my life, but I was really excited to build my own company as well.
And in that period that you were doing law as well, you said you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Did you ever think, one day I do want to start a company? Or was it something which was just totally out of your mind until later on?
So when I was a lawyer, so I worked in Moscow, Dubai, Kazakhstan, the US, Geneva, Paris. So, I traveled around a lot. And, I loved the traveling bit and meeting lots of new clients. And I was also I was one of the pioneers of Islamic finance as well. So that was really exciting because you were creating something new. I don't think I ever thought, hey, I wanted to run a new company or a firm or a startup. But what actually happened was I got cancer. And at that time, I was preparing myself for partnership. And I guess that was a real pivotal time in my life where I thought to myself, you know what, on one side I could work here for 90 hours a week and climb this ladder. And once I've gone up one side of the ladder, I'm going to have to climb another ladder and another ladder. And it's do I want that for my life or do I want something else? And I really think that that's what made me change, and I remember being in the hospital and I just thinking what do I like to do? What do I want to do? And I love traveling. I love meeting new people and I wanted to do business, but I didn't know what that really meant, if I was honest with you. So honestly, when I got better, I just started my own company and not really thinking it would turn into anything, if I'm honest with you. But, 10 years on and it, did, knock on wood rather well. I loved it. It allowed me to meet my husband, allowed me to travel, it allowed me to meet some really interesting people as well. But yeah, if you'd asked me while I was a lawyer, did I want to be running my own firm and my own business, I would probably say no, because I didn't know any different. And actually moving from a professional job to a startup is actually quite hard because you've got everything done for you in a professional law firm, right? You got your PA, your computer people, all this support people. And then all of a sudden you're on your own. It's like, well, how does the printer work? Like really basic stuff. Yeah. You don't actually know how and you've got to humble yourself a little bit to say, okay, I'm going to start again. And I think to start again, you do need a little bit of tenacity and belief in yourself, right? And courage to do it.
What was that first idea then that you came up with when you were in the hospital? What was the business idea?
So I had done a lot of work, obviously, through Islamic derivatives and Islamic finance in the Middle East. So, and, they were, I think there's like 400 family offices out there and, institutional investors. And I thought, hey, how do I connect them to all the private equity guys that we work with, basically? And I just thought, right, I'll be an introducer. And it doesn't sound very complicated, but like no one had mapped out the world at that stage. This is 2009, 2010. And actually, there was a lot of insights that I had because obviously working in different places. And so, people started paying me for those introductions. We started growing the team. And it was a very interesting kind of life for 10 years because you were doing lots of different projects. So one day is oil and gas, the next day healthcare, the next day, mining. And you meet really interesting people. And I actually loved being on the road because I didn't have children at the time as well. So, why not, right? So, and that I find really refreshing because your brain expands so much by meeting so many different people. So but honestly, it was more like, what do I like doing? And I did actually try and find a job in that called private placement, but nobody would give me a job because they were like, well, you're a lawyer. So, they've given you a label. And it's like, well, so that I'll go build my own company then. And that's exactly it. And, I enjoyed it. I loved it. And then, obviously when COVID hit, I decided, right, I'm going to pivot again and build the fund then basically. But yeah, it's very much been born out of personal circumstances why I've changed.
So you mentioned about humbling yourself as well.
Yeah.
What were some of the difficult things you had to go through? So it's like one thing is like learning how the printer works.
Yeah.
But in terms of the shift from the corporate mindset to the entrepreneur mindset.
So when you're working for a big firm, you have their reputation and their kudos as you walk into a room, right? It's like, hey, I'm Priya who works for X. You don't have to be that good because you're working for X, right? Whereas when you run your own company, it's you. People are paying you for delivering something. And at the beginning, obviously there's no track record as well. So you have to build it. And, we did a lot of stuff for free at the beginning, really have to prove ourselves. But, during that journey, we did. But yeah, that's a huge difference because you don't have any reputation to rely on. It's just yourselves. And people have to like you to pay you, right? That's tough. And it's the same thing now with building the fund, so obviously I had run my own business for over 10 years. But then when building the fund, we had to like start again. It's like, well, what do you know about women's health? Why is this even a thing? How are you guys going to do it?
That question right there. So why is this even a thing? Why are you looking at women's health?
Well, it's a $1 trillion TAM. It's bigger than the global crypto market. Why aren't people investing in it? Why shouldn't women have precision medicine catered to them because they have different hormones and chromosomes? Traditionally, healthcare has been built by men for men. If you look at the science side, the research side, people always go in via the male route. Most clinical trials are done on white men. I think people of color and women were only allowed in the US to be included in clinical trials post 1993. That's crazy. So everything pre 1993 had never been tested on women and people of color. So we don't know how those medicines interact with us. So that is why, I was so excited by it. So there's obviously the upside on the monetary side, but obviously as well, having gone through the cancer, I then went through IVF with my husband as well, and the complications with that. And then I have an autoimmune disease as well. It was like, hold on a minute, why aren't there solutions for people like me? What happened? Why is it so difficult? If I always joke, if I was going to set up a men's healthcare fund, I bet you I would be funded by tomorrow. And it's like, well, why am I not important as a woman? Why shouldn't my healthcare needs be put at the forefront? So yeah, I'm a real believer in that. And yes, there are nuances according to race, to gender, to your epigenetics, and those things need to be taken into consideration when you're building out solutions.
So you've obviously got co-founders as well, right?
Yes.
How did that team all come together? What was that origin story there?
We've all got kids in the same school, basically. No, so it's quite interesting. So we've known each other as friends, but we all have kids of the same age as well, right? So I guess there's a little bit of bonding going on there as well from that side. But it was really interesting. It was my original idea to build the fund, but then I couldn't think of better people to build the fund with than my co-founders, because I just thought, guys, you need to come in. And they were like, yeah, we want in. And, it was just about being excited about something, if you remember back in COVID and we were all stuck at home, you don't know what the outcomes were going to be. It's quite a scary time, especially if you'd been ill before, it's like, where are we in the world? And, I think a lot of people wanted to do something radical and different and make a difference. So yeah, we just thought, right, let's do this. And we're still together. We're still building it. And we've invested together as well. And we've had our ups and downs as well. But I think as a team, we work really well. And what I need to know is that they have my back and I have theirs. And so that's quite unique to find, but it takes time to build that. And that's very different to my original firm, which I started in 2010, because I was the only co-founder, right? I was running it by myself. So you take all the responsibility on your own head. And that's scary. You have no one to talk to, really. And it's quite a lonely journey.
That's one of the things that a lot of people think about, where lots of people want to start companies by themselves, but I just said there's so much pressure. You've also got to wear so many different hats.
Yeah, too.
And with the co-founders you've got now, what's kind of the nice thing about that in terms of what do you try to focus on, or where do your skills lie in the team? And what's some of the stuff that you maybe don't have to do as much of anymore that you're really happy that you don't have to do?
Yeah. So for me, for example, Aya is brilliant at organizing and operations. And I've always found that slightly challenging. It takes up so much of your time, 2 days a week. And you think to yourself, right? And she loves it and she's brilliant at it, right? Marissa, she lives in New York, so she can do all the US side of things. And she's a badass, I wouldn't have a fight with her. So that's great, basically. And Alex, she's a real numbers girl. She, give her a fund model and she's like, oh, I'll come back in 10 minutes. And I've just revised all of that. We can all do those things, but we all have our specialities and we can all rely on each other. And I think that's the big difference to OCP, my first company, because it's so much more enjoyable having partners, actually. And actually, like you said, you can rely on other people as well, right? I also think diversity of thought is really important, right? You're not always right. You actually need people to challenge you, to go in the right direction. And actually, if you've got people around you who actually want the best, so think of the company or the fund as our baby together, you want the best for the baby, you need to challenge each other, right? And I think that's the biggest difference with OCP when I started it, because I think it came out of a very personal journey. And, the cancer and stuff, it was, for me, I didn't really want to share that with anyone as well. It took me a while to want to open up and share that company as well. And I felt so much, whereas this time round, I feel so much more comfortable sharing it. And also I know we can do more together as well, right? So that's also very important.
And you also did angel investments before starting this as well, right? And that's something which you do too. And it's obviously, when it's a fund, right, it's difficult to start a fund and raise money. if you haven't got a track record.
Yep.
And when you've got the angel track record, it helps, right? And that
Definitely.
So what's some of the angel investments you made beforehand? And
during the time of the fund, you can't say one baby is more important than the other, right?
What was the very first one, I guess, the very first angel investment?
God, well, so out of the fund, which is a very women's healthcare theme, so was Natal, which has just been acquired by Maven. So that was our first exit this week, which is brilliant.
Congratulations.
So thank you. So I met Kate, who's the founder of Maven, and Layla on Tuesday who's the founder of Natal on Tuesday for dinner, and it was so nice just to see like strong women sort of around the table, and they made this happen, and you think, I'm a small part of that. And that's really cool, actually. But yeah, I mean, I love Aura, I love Lache. Chen, she started to build a company for the first 1,001 days post having a baby. And it came out of her own, issues of breastfeeding. And she used to work in films. And you think to yourself, that's so cool that you managed to do that. There's Angela, who runs Planet Nourish, which is for diabetes for Southeast Asian population. And, she's like a total badass. She just keeps going. And I really admire that. There's Anya of Serona, which is building an online clinic, and your ex-Goldman Sachs banker. But, she's got it. She's got what it takes, to get to that unicorn status. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the people we've invested in, we personally like them as well as founders, but also we see something special in them. But, sometimes they don't fit the traditional pattern recognition mold, and that's probably a good thing because, the ones that do have started to blow up things, right? So it shows you that you don't have to fit the mold. And I think we take a lot of pride. And most of our founders are first-time founders, first and foremost. But secondly, as well, they've had to go through a lot of adversity, so they're quite strong people, and I really admire that. And obviously, by us putting our money in them, shows that we believe in them, right? And that's what we want people to put money into us, so that they believe in us as well, right? So for me, the money is like a recognition of, yeah, we believe in what you're doing. We're backing you, basically. But yeah, it's so interesting. We've met so many founders in the last, like 2 years, and definitely at least out of women's health, it's mostly people who've had a personal journey and just thought, I can't find a solution, I'm going to go build one myself. I mean, that takes in itself courage to do, right? And maybe they don't even come from the industry. So that's really impressive, right? But yeah, I definitely think, being a woman and being a woman of color is much harder to raise, either as a startup or as a fund manager, basically. And, if you haven't been to the right schools or have the right networks, it's going to be harder. But that doesn't mean it's impossible, and it doesn't mean you don't deserve it.
I've seen a lot of founders that you haven't invested in too.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that people listening right now, maybe trying to raise money or want to raise money in the future? What advice would you give them in terms of how they frame themselves or how they pitch?
Okay, so my personal view right now is try and stay alive, honestly. I think after Silicon Valley Bank, Credit Suisse, I don't think it's the best environment to go and raise it. And if you can extend your runway to as much as possible and be lean, that's going to serve you better, because it's never good doing a down round. It really isn't, not in any environment, especially not now. So, that's my honest opinion, right? I think things will start to improve post-September onwards, but we've still got a bit of a rocky patch. Like Silicon Valley Bank hasn't really been sorted out in the US. You've still got First Republic, Credit Suisse was bought for a steal. I mean, who knows who's next? I was reading on the way here about Deutsche Bank. I'm thinking, oh God, what's going on now, basically? So, yeah, I mean, my suggestion would be lean and actually extend that runway to as much as possible. But, keep talking to investors, but not with the idea of raising, but to build relationships. Be with the right people, and actually get yourself out there as much as possible. And then, obviously staying alive is the most important thing. Then it's about not only growth, but also profitability. That's a big thing that's changed over the last couple of years. We've had so many aggressive growth metrics when actually it's about bringing in revenue and being profitable. I mean, if you think about our parents, when they were building their businesses, they weren't looking at growth metrics. They were looking at, well, can I pay the bills, right? Can I bring revenue in and am I making a profit? I think back to 101. That's how you need to run a business, basically. And I think, these valuations all need a little bit of a rethink, basically, going forward. So my personal view would be hold on a bit, stay alive, stay lean, and just wait it out a bit, and definitely have more than one bank account, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's for sure. I think people have realized, treasury and governance, you really need to be taking those things seriously, right?
Yeah, it's amazing what some people have got away with in the last couple of years, instead of having shambolic systems basically. And you look at it and you think, I think from the outside perspective, sometimes some people listening right now think, oh, this person or this company must be run really well because it's so big. It's like, you'll be really surprised about how big some companies can get with really bad internal processes.
Totally. And, sometimes the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand. I mean, one of the good things about running a small firm, is that what is going on everywhere. And, for someone like me, that makes me feel comfortable, and I need to know, and I feel happy knowing. But yeah, in a big company, as you scale, it's virtually impossible. So you're relying on those processes, right? And sometimes those processes go amiss. And so I think it's really important now for all of us to be more clear about what we're trying to do and actually build processes that we can manage, which aren't overly complicated as well. So you actually know where your money is, it's really basic stuff, which sometimes, people use fancy words that don't actually get you to where you need to get to. Ultimately, business needs to bring in revenue and hopefully make a profit, I mean, it's great to have growth metrics, and that's fantastic, but for God's sake, stay alive first.
Yeah. And so you mentioned there as well about you raising your own money as well. And I guess some people might know how the VC world works. So you get the limited partners at the top, so it tends to be pension funds, huge amounts of money.
Institutional money,
who then give it to venture capital firms to deploy, right. And those venture capital firms then are trying to find usually high growth companies that can then give a return. Then that gives a return to venture capitalist, and they then give a return to the limited partner.
Exactly.
So usually the limited partners kind of work in the dark. People don't necessarily know what's going on there from the startup perspective. And what's your challenge, obviously, is that startups trying to raise money from you.
Yeah.
But then you're trying to raise money from the limited partners. And how has that journey been?
So that's been a very humbling journey. So as I mentioned, my previous company, I would meet limited partners all the time for, big private equity firms, big venture firms. And the first thing we have noticed is the type of questions that we get asked as an emerging manager, as a new manager, which to some extent I think is correct, because one has to do the due diligence properly. But also as well, it's, like in the US, for example, an emerging manager is an emerging manager for 3 funds. So you're basically competing as a first-time manager against someone who's already run 3 funds. That's crazy, right? So that definition is a little too wide, according to me, right? But at the same time as well, you're going to get far more no's than you ever will yeses. And it is very humbling. And I think it says a lot of strength of character about how you deal with those no's, but not to be abused in the process as well, right? Some people, are just on a fishing expedition. So you don't open up your data room to everybody. It's really important that. But then other times, people you think who will support you, who you've known for a long time, aren't supporting you for whatever reason. And, again, you've got to take that on the chin. And then there are people who come out of left field who are absolutely amazing. So, it's a real mixed bag, but it's a very emotional journey. It's not something I think that at least we haven't been able to disassociate ourselves with, because it is personal, right? You're basically saying, hey, I want to go set up a fund. I put my own money in, so I put my own skin in the game. I've done this, haven't taken a salary for 2 years, but now I want you to believe in me as well. So I believe in me because I've done this, but now I need you to believe in me. And I've got my numbers to prove it, but at the same time, I still need you to take a leap of faith on me. And that is hard when people say no. That really is. But I think with time, you begin to take it slightly less personally. But it's still shocking. Sometimes you get like really strange responses. So, for example, I remember reaching out to one very big corporate guy, and he virtually wrote back on email, I don't believe in women's health. Complete rubbish. And I was like, well, this is a bit crazy. You must have a compliance officer somewhere around you. So you shouldn't be writing things like that anyway. But, people don't think sometimes what they write. And that is a little bit shocking, right? But at the same time as well, like I remember we wanted to meet a CEO of a big bank, and Marissa and I just couldn't work out how we're going to get to him. So we've actually tried 6 versions of his email, right? Because you never read it. We wrote really nice email. And actually, virtually 2 hours later, he wrote back saying, come into the office. I'd love to see you. So, sometimes it does work as well, right? But you've got to be quite sassy, I think.
You mentioned as well, like before we started recording, about how the first 6 months or so was just getting all of that data and proof points, right? And obviously some people won't know that, right? So what can you tell us about women founders?
Yeah.
And how successful they are, and how much of an outlier they are sometimes in terms of you invest in women founders, more likely to do. Well, I'll let you finish that. What happened?
Yeah, so totally. So when we had this lovely idea, but at the same time, you need proof points and data points around it, especially when people are going to ask you what those proof points and data points are. So we spent about a year building a fund as well, right? With your own money and time and energy to find those proof points. But, the bottom line is, women make excellent entrepreneurs. They burn less, they scale faster, they exit faster as well. They are more efficient use of capital as well. And yet, if you look at the data points, I think it was something the European Investment Fund issued, and also I think it was Diversity UK as well. 89% of money goes to all male founding teams, 10% to male, female sort of co-founders, and 1% to women only teams. That's nuts. On the data, that doesn't make any sense. So what is the reason for that? Partly is to do with a lack of, I think, communities that you work with, right? So do women traditionally, even in corporates, that's been one of the issues, how do you get to know your peers? You go out for drinks, right? Pretty difficult during COVID. You go play golf, you go watch some sporting event, but you do stuff together. But, if you're running a family as well, and you have other responsibilities, when do you have the time to do that? And I think that's the issue. But women make, on the data point, excellent entrepreneurs. And also, one extra thing as well, even though, we're investing in women's health, so we're looking through the lens of women's health as a first point of contact in healthcare, it's really interesting. 20% of our founders are male. So there's more men coming into women's health because they see the untapped potential. We've been looking at stuff with, AI, D2C, B2B, it's a huge market across different variables. And it's not just for women, basically, men are excited about it as well, because there's very few things out there where you can, innovate in, which is actually going to give you the upside now, right? So that's also very encouraging as well from my side.
So really enjoyed this conversation. I'm going to move to a quick 5 questions now because of the time.
Okay.
So first one is, who are 3 British Asians that you'd love to shout out that you think people should be paying attention to?
Sure. So Pahini, she developing cancer tech for breast cancer. She's a founder, absolutely fantastic. She's gone through her own personal experiences. She's already done 2 rounds of funding, totally. And she's really funny as well. And Roy, she is the co-founder of Serona. It's an online clinic, absolutely a badass, tenacious. She doesn't give up. Love what she's doing. Went through Y Combinator as well. And Angela, she is an amazing founder. She, created Planet Nourish from zero with no previous background. And she has done wonderful things. And she is doing wonderful things. And, always so lovely and jovial when you speak to her. But, is a bull to a red cape, right? She knows exactly what she wants, which I love.
Yeah, it's awesome. So if people listening right now want to reach out to you,
right,
for help or guidance, what should they reach out to you about?
I don't know. I mean, anyone, I guess, how to start a company, right? Having the courage to start something. I think that's the hardest thing. like actually to start it. Once you're in it, it's very different, right? But to start, you can think of all the things that could go wrong, right? But yeah, so maybe.
And on the other side, is there anything that you need help with right now that maybe somebody listening could be able to help you with? Or Goddess Gaia Ventures?
Yeah, we'd love like great investors, honestly, people who believe in women's healthcare, people who want to change the paradigm, people who want to help women and create new solutions. We would love that. So, for us, that's our sort of major thing that we're looking for. And, people who add value to what we're doing as well, who can then add value to our portfolio companies as well. So that would be amazing.
So thank you so much for coming on. And really important what you're doing as well. And obviously, as like everybody knows, well, I say everybody knows, but not enough people know, it's just how much innovation there can be in women's health.
Totally.
Like you said, there's so much space for disruption there because it's been overlooked so much in the past.
Totally.
But have you got any final words to the audience?
Oh God, yeah, just keep believing, honestly. Like, where you start off in life doesn't determine where you're going to end up, right? And, the journey is what you make it. I really believe that. I've seen it in my own life as well, actually. So you just got to believe in that. And kind of like, don't forget where you came from as well.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It means a huge amount to us. And we don't think you realise how important you are. Because if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you leave us a 5-star review, it makes a world of difference. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here, to inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians, if you do those things, you can help us achieve that mission. And you can help us make a bigger impact. And by doing that, it means we can get bigger guests, we can host more events, we can do more for the community. So you can play a huge part. So thank you so much for supporting us.